this is why a friend of mine, knowing my interest in all things aliens and woo-woo and voodoo, he went to Roswell and brought this back to me. So my last 10 years at the news journal, the tongue above my desk. Right there. And Laura, one thing I want to say about cacti, some UFO researchers.
Oh, I'll try this. Is this good?
Yeah, that makes Zoomers can hear you.
Yeah, some UFO researchers say that we humans have an anthropomorphic, anthrocentric bias. In other words, aliens may be out there in the form of plants or cacti or whatever. So I'm just passing that on. My talk today, going to talk about Bigfoot, the Blessed Virgin Mary, UFOs, ghosts, what happened in Roswell 80 years ago, other strange beasties that people like me who are interested in this field call high weirdness. Now, you may say, what does Bigfoot have to do with the Blessed Virgin Mary? Quite a bit, some say, as it turns out. This is one, there's two books I have by Hilary Evans, and you can see the title. I included this because I love the cover. It kind of introduces all these different facets of what I and others call the contactee experience. It's experiences of supernatural, weird encounters that the rational mind just says, this can't be. This is not part of the rational world. Oh, did I do that? Oh, let's see. All right, there's the other Hilary Evans book. And his by means are not the only books on strange phenomenon. But I like the cover of that. I grew up in Los Alamos, New Mexico, literally 3 miles down from the front gate of the lab where Oppenheimer and his colleagues created the atomic bomb. My family lived in a mobile home. Anyway, one night we were going back home and it was literally just past the lab entry gate. And I was in the back seat. I'm 5 or 6. My younger brother's 4. My older brother, he may have gone to college by then. Anyway, my mom said, "Did you see that?" I went, "What?" She said, "It looked like a ghost." This is her word. She said, "It looked like a ghost crossed in front of the car." And, I'm 5 or 6, and that just scared the doo-doo out of me. Like, what? So anyway, and these images I created with AI, that's another talk about AI, but so I don't want you to think I stole these. Well, anyway, these are AI images. And then in my high school years, my father went from being an accountant to a pipe fitter. He was working on the nuclear plant in Surrey, Virginia. And my younger brother and I were spending the summers there and staying with our grandparents for a time. Anyway, there's a ferry that runs across the James River from Surrey to Jamestown. So there was no bridge at that part of the James River. So we're riding the ferry. And again, my mom says, "Did you see that?" And she said, "It looked like the Loch Ness Monster." And I didn't see it again, but there was a man, you park your car and then you can get out and walk around the ferry and everything. But there was a man near my mom said, "I saw it too." So it wasn't just my mom, but it was only when I got older that I began to wonder if my mom, like my girlfriend Michelle, is some kind of psychic intuitive or something. I don't know. So that brings me to my next question. How many of you have had an encounter that you think is weird, supernatural, ghost, vision of a deceased beloved? Quite a few. That seems to be, quote unquote, the norm. Oh, yes. I should say a personal direct experience. My late wife, Cheryl, passed away in April of 2015. And about it's about 2 months later, I was in our house. She died in my arms. She was African American. About 3 months later, I heard, I may have related this story to you all. I was in the back of the house and I heard what sounded like a wine glass falling on the hard tile of the kitchen floor and shattering. It was a glass shattering sound, very distinctive. And I just instinctively called out Cheryl's name and rushed into the kitchen just out of instinct. And, you know, in those nanoseconds, my rational, pragmatic brain is saying, oh, it's nothing. And then my mystical, intuitive brain is saying, Cheryl. Got in the kitchen. I couldn't find any shattered glass. I looked all over. I thought maybe the AC or something had vibrated a glass off a shelf and it crashed down and shattered. Couldn't find anything. So I decided that it was an audio hallucination. And there is such a thing, not just visual hallucinations, but audio hallucinations. Then it was about a year and a half later in my neighborhood. I woke up at night to take a whiz and I felt a presence in the hallway in my house. It was dark. I didn't look down. It was unnerving, but I wasn't freaked out. And I thought, oh, but I just kind of out of the corner of my eyes, like there's something there. There's some kind of, and I went back to sleep, able to go back to sleep, got up, same thing happened again before sunrise. And then 3 days later, I'm walking around my daily walk in my neighborhood, and I ran into some neighbors, and the wife said, Rick, did something strange happen in your hallway at home the other night? I'm like, what? And she said, I don't tell a lot of people this, but I'm psychic. And she said, that was Cheryl. And she said, in fact, I see Cheryl beside you right now. Now, for me personally, that is the strongest evidence of an encounter because I didn't tell her anything. There's other weird things, but here was a friend out of nowhere mentioning this experience I had had. This is Michelle's book. She should probably be giving this talk, my girlfriend Michelle, Florida's Haunted Hospitality. She wrote a book where she went to different inns and B&Bs around Florida that were reputed to be haunted and wrote about her experiences. And anytime we go anywhere now, she always says, all right, we got to find what's supposed to be the most haunted place and stay there. And I'm just kind of like, yeah. And anyway, but she writes about her weird encounters. And Michelle is a psychic intuitive witch, is how she identifies her essence, her spirituality. At the Museum of Arts and Sciences in Daytona Beach, there's an African wing. And we were going to go there to hear, give a docent was going to give a tour. This was about a year ago. And we got there earlier and we were just walking around looking. There's lots of these authentic African masks and relics and artifacts. Some are 100 years old, some 150. And this is one of the masks. And when when Michelle got in front of this mask, she went into a trance. And I've seen that happen 2 or 3 times when we went to some of those haunted places. And I knew that she was just kind of walking around and just kind of like this and intensely concentrating. And I knew just to stay back. And then after that passed about 2 minutes, she said, there's a spirit in the mask and it's talking to me. It was talking to me and it showed me images of some ritual that involved mud, earth, and blood. I'm like, whoa. So the docent comes in and she starts the tour and we're halfway around the other side. And the docent says, we're going to get to a mask. Somehow it came up, the woo-woo side of things. And she said, we're going to get to a mask in a little bit that is reputed to have a spirit that can speak to witches. And Michelle and I looked at each other, what? Sure enough, when we got to that mask, the docent said, this mask, if it recognizes a witch, it will speak. And then Michelle, raised her hand and shared her experience. So that was woo-woo. I'm going to talk, there's 5 realms from my readings to explain these kind of contacts. One is the physical mysteries, hidden realities hypothesis. And that basically says that when the aliens crashed at Roswell, what was that, 80 years ago? And also, are any of you familiar with this image? This is the famous Patterson-Gimlin film, reputed to be a Bigfoot filmed in Northern California back in the 60s. Now, the physical mysteries, hidden realities hypothesis states that these are physical occurrences and which science can't explain because we just can't track them down. That aliens live on a far distant galaxies and they visit us, or that Bigfoot or Loch Ness are actual entities that we just haven't been able to track down and cage and study. A lot of researchers don't believe in the physical entities hypothesis. It's more weird than that. And we're going to get to that. This is kind of a well-known painting called The Nightmare by Henry Fuseli, Fuseli. He painted this in 1781. And this leads to the second hypothesis that maybe these encounters are physical or neurological processes in our brains that modern medical science just doesn't understand. Is anybody in here familiar or heard of night terrors? Some of you may have experienced it. It's medically studied. Last I've read, it's not well understood, but people in different cultures, this is not universal among those who have night terrors, but it's different cultures, US and European countries. People will wake at night and they will have this sensation that an old hag or witch-like entity is sitting on their chest. And this is what this painter has dramatized in his painting. And people feel suffocated, like they can't breathe, and they feel like they're awake. It's more than just a dream. They feel like this is actually happening in real time. I don't know anybody that has experienced these, except at times when Cheryl was still in this world, sometimes she would wake up at night and she would just be hitting me and she'd be calling out my name, Ricky, Ricky, Ricky. And then she would wake up and I would say, she had some kind of night terror experience. Anyway, cross-cultural, different cultures have experienced this same phenomenon. And it doesn't always involve the night hag. And DMT elves, there's that hallucinogenic component that's in ayahuasca. Ayahuasca is the actual plant. It's not synthesized like LSD. It's I think it's mostly is grown in South America or found. But if you take ayahuasca, it's a hallucinogenic, some call it an entheogen, which is a plant that reveals God, I think is a literal translation. But a lot of people who take ayahuasca report the same experiences of what's called DMT elves. Again, different people, different cultures, they take this drug, and for visionary, religious, and the native cultures of South America, it's part of their religious ceremonies. But, we Americans, we want to adapt it for fun and pleasure and, or stupidity, but also legitimate mind-altering experiences. But a number of people who take it report encountering in visions what they call they're elf-like creatures, and they seem sentient and they seem intelligent. Now we're gonna the third hypothesis is what some call the ultra-dimensional hypothesis, that maybe these entities are in another dimension. And this is where you kind of start getting Bigfoot conflated with the Blessed Virgin Mary and other phenomena. In West Virginia in the early 70s, has anybody heard of Mothman? There's a movie, there's a book, John Keel wrote The Mothman Prophecy. But there was all kinds of high weirdness happening in West Virginia. People reported seeing this winged creature at night, and it was like more than a dozen, maybe 24 people reporting over a period of a year, this winged kind of monstrous creature that they'd be driving and it would be kind of following them in the car. The movie Men in Black, anybody remember that movie? Will Smith, funny, I love the movie. But Men in Black are a phenomenon that accompanies the UFO contactee experience, especially around the Mothman. I don't recall that there were any UFOs sighted in connection with the Mothman phenomenon, but in some UFO encounters, people will have an encounter and then 3 or 5 days later or 2 weeks later, they'll get a knock on their door. This has been reported, and it's men dressed in suits. They look like they're from the government. Black hats, black suit, just kind of like in the movie. And they are just kind of warned, don't talk about this. And again, it sounds like something out of science fiction, but people have reported this. Now, we can discredit them and say, okay, you're hallucinating, you're drunk, you're what-da-da-da. But again, a number of people of all walks of life have reported such encounters. There's another AI take on Roswell. Dickens' A Christmas Carol, that's a contactee story. He sees ghosts. He sees ghosts. Again, more high weirdness. Why? I guess I should mention fairies, the fairy folk in Ireland. That comes under, as late as the early 19th century. If you went out into rural Ireland, you could find people who said, oh yes, the wee folk, the good people. You don't call the fairies, they're called the Sidhe, S-I-D-H-E, which in the Irish language is pronounced she, as in banshee. Banshees are a type of Sidhe that are a death omen. But you don't call them the Sidhe, you call them the wee folk or the good folk, because legend says if you identify them by name, they're very mischievous, and it's not that they're malevolent, but they're amoral. They don't understand, the folklore says, human. They don't see things in human terms. Oh, there's my Irish lass and the Sidhe. The jinn. Have we heard of genies? Genies. Genie, the word comes from jinn, D-J-I-N-N, which is Middle Eastern, prominent among Muslim countries, folklore. But the jinn are a type of supernatural entity. Of course, in Western culture, we're familiar with, you rub the lamp, the genie appears, and boom, you get 3 wishes, and you cruise the rest of your life. Yay! But, however, in my sitar playing, there is a sitar raga, which is basically a musical scale called Malkuns, M-A-L-K-A-U-N-S. And the lore around, if you play this specific raga after midnight, it will summon the jinn. And it gets even more weird. The legend says, if they don't like your playing, you're toast. You're toast, yes. And I happen to become friends with a sarod player, which is another Middle Eastern, from India. an Indian instrument. And Sayak, he toured the U.S. with an international group of musicians. And I asked him about this legend. And I said, Sayak, because he's from India and he's not Muslim, but he knows Muslim musicians. I said, is this what's your take on this? And he said, it's absolutely true. So he's younger than me. So he said, it's absolutely true. So I may have told, all right, there's the angry. So yeah, obviously this Jin is not pleased with his playing. So I feel I will not play Malkins after midnight. I'm not, call me superstitious or whatever, but I'm just playing it safe because I don't know if I'm confident in my sitar playing, but I don't want to displease the Jin. Oh, and by the way, that scale, that musical scale, you remember the hit by Bill Withers? Ain't no sunshine when she's gone. The same scale. There's a lot of Western pop music, rock music that uses those notes, those series of notes. So, and I'm not going to sing that Bill Withers song after midnight either. When I was working at the News Journal as their entertainment writer, I had the chance to interview Judy Collins. Have you heard of Judy Collins? Maybe I've related the story here before. If I have, please forgive me. And this was in the late 90s, and her CD at the time, the liner notes, she mentioned that she had written a song about a friendship that had turned venomous. And in the liner notes, she said something, the blah, 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 demon, demonic, da, da, da. So I'm interviewing her by phone. The story's going to preview her upcoming concert in the Daytona area. And I said, oh, that's a very powerful metaphor that you said that when this friendship went bad, that you felt it was like a demon appearing. And she said, it wasn't a metaphor. That actually happened. She said, I have a piano by my poolside where I write and compose. And I was working on this song, and out of the corner of my eye, on the other side of the pool, she said, I saw this demon hunched over, and it got up and spread wings and walked around. And she was totally serious about this. And I'm on the phone just hearing her, and I'm freaking out. I'm glad she couldn't see me because I'm just like, wow. So, and then, you know, in reading over the years, reading other interviews of her, she shared this story with others, and it was in her liner notes. I did not know a lot about Teresa of Avila, A-V-I-L-A. But this is a dramatization. She was a Spanish nun and mystic who lived in the 1500s. And this is indicative of her mystical encounter. I'm going to read this translation. This is from there's a professor of religious studies and who wrote a recent book, American Cosmic, UFOs, Religion, Technology, is the name of her book. And she quotes from Teresa's writings. And obviously this has been translated into English. This is Teresa writing. His face, about her encounter with an angel. His face was so aflame that he appeared to be one of the highest rank of angels who seemed to be all on fire. In his hands, I saw a great golden spear, and at the iron tip, there appeared to be a point of fire. This he plunged into my heart several times so that it penetrated to my entrails. When he pulled it out, I felt that he took them with it and left me utterly consumed by the great love of God. Wow. Wow. So she definitely had an encounter of the mysterious kind. Have any of you heard of the Virgin Mary visions that were at Our Lady of Fatima, or I say Fatima? That happened in 1917 in Portugal. These young people, 13, 12 years old, said they saw the Virgin Mary a vision out in the field, and within weeks or months, people were coming from all over the world to see this appearance. And from what I've read, some people did have see that. This is getting, I skipped over it, but anyway, this is getting into the spiritual hypothesis of to explain all these strange encounters. So it should be noted, for me, there seems to be a divide between those first four group of theories: the physical but hidden phenomenon, the psychological, neurological, the ultra terrestrial, that maybe these entities are coming from a different dimension and they're crossing over in our dimension, and then the supernatural. It seems to me that when it comes to the religious spiritual side, we have more of a tendency, even if we don't believe, we give that more credence. I'm going to use the obvious example for our Western culture. Look at look at the miracles that are, that the Christian Bible says that Jesus performed. Water into wine, walked on the water, and I guess it was God that rose Lazarus from the dead, and of course Jesus himself, crucified, and 3 days later he's walking around. So I guess for myself is, what is the difference between those types of visions and encounters versus somebody who says that, oh, I was abducted by a UFO. And I've had friends who, my late friend Don Zangi, who recently passed away, he was a minister and a psychic at Casadega, but he used to lead a UFO contactee support group in the area. And back in the 90s, he was kind enough to let me do a story on them. And it's very real people who have experienced those. And for some of them, it's very traumatic too. So I guess I'll leave you with this. I'm not saying if you believe in the divinity of Jesus that you should believe in aliens or Bigfoot. But I'm just saying, whatever your spiritual path is, it probably has some sort of, maybe, and maybe not, some sort of supernatural component, some kind of component where things happen that you have to take on faith. As I don't think Bono was the first one to say this of U2, but he said some things have to be believed to be seen. So I'm not saying if you believe in Jesus, then you can't dismiss aliens, but I'm just saying we should have an open mind. Myself, my late wife Cheryl would say, Rick, you have all these books on these topics and you don't believe. I said, I don't disbelieve. I'm just curious. There's something going on, and humankind, we haven't really explained it. And then after I had my own experiences, and then knowing Michelle and seeing, repeated things, it's like, it's expanding my spiritual universe. So thank you all. So, I'm hoping afterwards that we can, if y'all want to meet, I'd love to hear any stories, tales that you would like to share. Let me see, what do we got coming up? Is that, Chariots of the Gods. Eric von Daniken says that aliens visited the earth and created the Egyptian civilization. There's a menagerie. It's kind of fun playing with AI. All right, I'm going to leave you with those guys. Ooh. Thank you all.